So if you're making $263,000 per year, you're part of the 1% of Kentucky. And that's comparable all across the United States. So I really think that the line of demarcation should be $250,000. If under a master's administration, if you're underneath $250,000, you would not be taxed. Anybody above it would get an increase in their taxes. Right now, those people who are above $250,000 actually have a lower tax bracket proportionally, percentage-wise. They're only paying 6% or so, while the working class peoples are paying 10%. So the wealthy have been getting away with no taxes whatsoever, right? No taxes on no government. No more taxes. And then they're going to cut into education. That's how they pay for everything, right? You got the Kentucky Fried Pensions debacle that we're being faced with. And it's like $1 billion in the hole, right? They're not putting $1 billion in per year that they need to be putting into the pension funds. It took a whistleblower, though, just to be able to point that out. It's a mess, and nobody seems to care that it's a mess. They pay for these outside agents to invest in these money in some corporate finance thing, and then it's gone. Nobody knows what happens to it. So it's kind of like Social Security. They'll take money out of it in order to use it as leverage for a loan, to get a bond, to get some other thing, and they won't pay it back. Meaning there's no money in the fund, right? It's being used for leverage. So if you don't pay your bills, all that money's gone. So Social Security is basically, I don't want to say it's on a house of sand. It's I think it's gonna last as long as the American Republic lasts. So how unequal is your state? The ratio between the average incomes of the top 1% and the bottom 99% in each state. So we're going to take a look at Kentucky. So the ratio between the average incomes and the bottom 99%. The outsized incomes of the top 1% are not constrained to one state or region. Income inequality is on the rise throughout the country. The map below shows the ratio between the average incomes of the top 1% and the bottom 99% in each state in 2012. In both Connecticut and New York, the average incomes of the top 1% were more than 48 times those on the bottom 99%, reflecting the role that financial sector salaries in the New York metropolitan area play in inequality in the United States. The financial sector. For some reason, a lot of the really wealthy countries throughout the world had a very strong financial sector. Understanding economics is important, but I think understanding economics is important just to the layman as it is to the corporate, headquarter guy. Economics, pure economics, cutthroat economics, maximize profits and get as much as you can from everybody else and save as much money, right? That's pretty much economics 101. That's how it goes, right? That's as simple as it goes. So, Kentucky, the rich have 18 times more money than the poor do. The top 1% has 18.5 times the amount of money, cash, greenbacks, than the average Kentuckian. So, since that's true, the top 1% being the colonel and the 99% being the chickens. Why would the chickens make sure the top 1% has a lower tax bracket than themselves? Of course we should tax the rich. Tax the 1%. I'm not talking about drowning them. Not talking about taking everything away from them. But the top 1%, a penny tax, maybe 2 cents, they're paying 6% compared to the average Joe are paying 10%. So the average Joe is actually paying more. In Kentucky. So that means they got a lower tax rate, and they're making 18.5 times more than the average Kentuckian. No, their life is great. They are just, drowning in all the wealth. Just so much money. They just can't even see them. There's so much money. So you have income inequality is not unique to one region. The top 1% earned between 14 and 19 times the income of the bottom 99% in 2012. That's the average. But in Kentucky, it's worse, right? There's some, Florida's way worse, the economic inequality. Nevada, look at that. Texas, New York. New York, people are like have a higher standard of living, but even then, the wealthy are making 48 times the amount of the average New Yorker. And so part of that could reflect, that means that the rich in New York is rich, rich, rich. Because if you think about Kentucky, it's not as wealthy, and the rich people in Kentucky aren't as rich as some of the other people in the United States. But the fact that they're not as rich, I don't know, 18 times the amount, that means if I make $10,000, right? If I'm an average Kentuckian, and I'm sure the median income is $40,000. So actually, let's go with that. That's what an average Kentuckian makes, right? So $40,000 is the median income, and if you was to take $40,000 and multiply it by 18, well, let's just say 20, that is 800,000. So meaning I would make, if I made $40,000, me being the average Kentuckian, the rich people make 18.5 times that amount, which is nearly $800,000. They're really, the wealthy are making nearly $1 million per year, whereas working class people are only making 40,000. And that's a pretty good job. I think if you got a $40,000 job and you're in Kentucky, that's a pretty good job. Minimum wage is what? You'll get what? Maybe 10,000 or so per year. So that's not very inspiring. Just $10,000. So, anyways, that's pretty fantastic, right? I will save that actually and write that down. Here's Terry Holiday talking about the pensions of the education. Here's I don't understand actually between these two numbers here. I was looking for the debt of Kentucky, and this looks like it's U.S. government spending, and it says that the total spending for Kentucky state and local spending by function was $43.6 billion. Now, I thought we only had $9 billion, so where does this $43.6 billion figure come from? Is this how much the federal government gives to the state and local? Because I don't see how the money is actually coming down the way it's supposed to. The deficit and the debt, it's saying that Kentucky's deficit / debt is about $44 billion. So, nobody's talking about that. A $44 billion debt, that's quite a debt, that Kentucky is faced with. And then it's saying that our GDP is 198. They expect it to go up to 198. The GDP right now, currently, for Kentucky is $171 billion. So 171. It didn't get up to that high. I've seen 186, so it depends on where you get the number. But, very good GDP. Our GDP is going, before I saw a 2000 number, our GDP was like 100 billion, which is still, somewhat impressive. But 171 billion, we are getting better at making a lot of stuff. And that's what the GDP is all about. So the debt 2010, it says here, this Xfinity Comcast.net states with the most debt. So I guess it's got a bunch of pictures with a lot of information on the bottom, unsourced. Have no idea where they got it from. But debt 2010 in Kentucky, it says that it's $14.25 billion. So that's quite a debt, $14 billion. Now, I want to actually make this comparison with the Japan deficit, because they can run a deficit 3 times their GDP. And they're doing okay. And this is America. We will bounce back. Are you kidding me? We don't need to, borrow a ton of money, but we do need to make sure we survive. Make sure that the transition from getting from, podunk Bronze Age, Dark Ages into the 21st postmodern era will be as smooth as possible. A lot of people need to be re-upped on their education, and people need to try and venture out and do new things. So that's the pre-deficit budget is $780 million. So they were saying that that's how much they were going to have a deficit, the pre-budget deficit. So they're guessing. And so I guess every year we're putting out 700. We're getting about $1 billion in the hole every year. So I don't know where these numbers come from. It gives me a general idea of where the Kentucky budget is, right? So our GDP here, it says in 2009 was $154.9 billion, right? So 2007 is 154, and 2009 it's 154. So basically there was no growth whatsoever. So Kentucky hasn't been finding new things, hasn't been doing new things. And, from 2007 to 2009, there is no increase of growth. And so we have, we're making 171 billion now. So we're able to find like 16 more billion dollars worth of industry and more stuff to produce, but we're not finding all that we need. So we can keep on produce, Kentucky. That's what we've got to do. You want to get out of this deficit? You make something. You make products and you sell that stuff that you make. That's what you do. So the GDP 2009, 154.94 billion. The debt GDP ratio is 9.2%. That is amazing. The debt to GDP ratio. I like that. Because the debt to the GDP ratio in Japan is 300%. So the fact that Kentucky is 9.2%, we can borrow money to get out to fix that pension thing. That's easy. Of course, we can borrow money to do that. We can also raise taxes on the rich. We can get into revenue generating programs. There's plenty of them. The new one that I just thought of that I thought would be really good is to go around buying gas stations. That way you'll make sure that they will never price gouge us ever again. So the government goes out, buys themselves 10 gas stations, sells everything cheaper there and the gas cheap as they can, and whatever profits they do make, you can also make it unionized, union friendly, and make sure that all the jobs are high quality jobs. But the gas stations the profits would go into the state. It would go into the general fund, and then from that general fund we could spend all of our money. Not spend all of it, but spend some money on the social programs. Without that money, you got to be able to get that money. How are you going to get that money? You can tax, right, which is sort of theft, right? You just take other people's money. You're the state, and it's politics, and you're allowed to do that. But the better way, I think, the more sort of honest way, would just be to get into industry, get into making, make some money. Get in there, make some money, make the money for the people, make sure it's run efficient and respect all, make sure humans are being respected like people. You don't need a plantation. And run it, like a business. Just exactly like a business. You run it like a business. It's a gas station. So you want to make money. You want to, you want to give a good product and a good service, but you also want to make money too. So, you need to have, sort of, dignity conscious people that's running it. I was thinking too, you probably could save some money by firing some of the state workers. Just a 5%, just cut across the board. Just fire 5% of the state workers. I don't know what the state workers do for me. Anytime I have to deal with any of the agencies, I always feel uncomfortable around them. And there's like so many agencies. There's so much government jobs. There's so many. I don't hate government jobs. I think we can make it leaner and cleaner, and we should do that. 5% across the board, and that would just be, sort of your directors and managers and stuff. And then I would promote from within. Get rid of the people that's doing it all wrong, and then bring somebody on up. Somebody that's been watching, that knows how the thing is run, has some different ideas. Get some young blood. You need to get some young blood up in the government, up in the politics. Young blood need to be in politics. That's exactly what they got to do. Governor Steve Beshear threatened that harsh cutbacks to education, economic development, and care for Kentuckians with mental illness and mental retardation are afoot, as well as the veto of several state-funded municipal projects which were not sufficiently funded. So municipal projects, building bridges, and whatever Louisville, Lexington, Covington wanted. The mentally crazy are getting cut back, and the economic development, which isn't a good thing, right? I don't know who they're developing. They're not developing regular class, working class folks. I think they could do better for reaching out. Drew Curtis having talking about that website that will make it more accessible to the public. Just a genius idea. It is a genius idea. It's just a great idea. Make the website accessible. They can see all the programs and all the things that, being in Kentucky entitles you to. And that way we can actually get some use out of them. Because if these state agencies aren't of any use to anybody, get rid of them. Seriously, get rid of them. Liberals do need to tighten their belts up. We could use some austerity measures. But most of the thing, it's going to be creativity, thinking outside the box, thinking of revenue-generating, ideas and programs. And, there's a million of them. I was thinking maybe buy an NBA team. But just the buying, like, sewage, water, stuff like that, that's, like, essentials that we need. I don't even know if you can make money out of it, but just when the government owns it, then they have more of a compulsion to give it to the people because that's who it's for. Right? Instead of saying, well, you didn't pay your water bill, now you die of, thirst. Well, you didn't pay your water bill, guess you gotta die now. Well, this is America. There's no way out of this. I'm sure there's a better way. Can I collect my rainwater? That's illegal. Don't you dare collect your rainwater. So that's the debt. Nobody's really talking about the debt. They always talk about the shortfall, not having enough money each year. And there's $1 billion that the pensions need, and we're already $14 billion in debt. Now, compared to the national government, we're $14 trillion in debt. And so if you compare those two, it's 1,000 less, right? It's 1,000% more or less, depending on which way you go. One's got a debt of 14 trillion, and the other one has a debt of 14 billion. So I don't know. I don't know if you could compare the federal government to the states. You can. The federal government's just so much bigger and involves all the same elements. So I remember actually I asked an economist this question, and I asked him, what would be your suggestion to fix the pension plan in Kentucky? Would it be to go with Milton? You more with a Milton Friedman or guy, or are you more of a Keynes, Maynard Keynes. We're all Keynesian now. And since we're all Keynes, I don't know. John Maynard Keynes, that's the economist, the great economist that broke out of Adam Smith and said, let's do things a little differently. Government can help economic development. And then everybody's been Keynesian ever since him. And he did change the game. So there's a Keynesian revolution. But the Keynesian revolution, it's just that government can get in. They don't have to be a controlled economy, but they can stimulate the economy, or they can cut taxes, and therefore, that might encourage people to go out and get some more stuff. Whoa! You mean the sales tax is only 5% at that place? I'm going to go there instead of the 6% place. I never hear anybody say something like that, but doesn't mean that it can't happen, right? Well, but that's the Keynesian revolution. And so I asked the economist between the Milton Friedman, who is a laissez-faire guy, basically wants the least amount of government as possible, sell all the assets. You don't need any public funding, jobs, public works program, no building roads or schools or hospitals. Don't build anything new, just bare bones, no infrastructure. You need a court system. So Milton Friedman just said, hey, well, at least we need a court system. He's a conservative, but he even understands you need some government. And so Milton Friedman, I feel like, is a good titan on the right for the economic, economic god for the right. And then Maynard Keynes is the economic god for the left. And the economist was like, what does Kentucky's economy have to do with either one of those guys? What? It's an enclosed economy unto itself also, So if you don't understand that, maybe you don't understand economics. Maybe you oppressing doing your classroom management, and you're forcing these stupid students to sit and listen to your BS, and you go on and on about whatever it is that you think you know. But maybe you need a real conversation with some other people, and because I don't know about your assumptions. I don't know where you're coming from. If you're just kind of saying, well, I'm smart, so shut up and listen to me. I don't know if I could do that. So the debt GDP ratio is 9.2%. GDP in 2009 was $155 billion, American dollars, U.S. dollars, which is important because we got Bitcoin and we got foreign currency that is competing with the American dollar. 2008, the American dollar about vanished. is about to be worthless, absolute zero, until Bush used socialism in order to bail capitalism out and bailed the banks out, to the tune of $700 billion, which is nice. The federal government has $700 billion just kind of sitting around just to give to the, to the financial industry. And, great. Financial sector, they're making all the money anyways. They're the ones that get bailed out. The American people are none the wiser. Nobody complains about it. Only Ralph Nader said something about it. It's just ridiculous. It helped get Obama into office, but my God, that was a perfect storm. That was perfect for Obama, right? 1 month before he gets elected, the entire economy around the world almost just collapsed. And there's a lot of countries still today that's reeling from, the little blip in our road, a little recession. But we had to use, we had to print up more currency. And so that devalued our dollar a little bit. But actually, that's what Milton Friedman had said, that you slowly, at a fixed rate, you slowly increase the money supply. And so he even agreed on that. So that's why I like understanding the left and the right, because, with the left, I could see where they're conservative, and that seems to be like the bigger shining spot. And then with the right, I could see, well, even he says this, right? So if you look at both of them, they both have good arguments, but what they're doing, and if they both agree, if John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman agreed on anything, just go with it. Just do it. Keynes says it's good, and Milton Friedman says it's good. Done. Talk to me no more. I'm there. I'm with you. So that's a little bit about Kentucky finances. A little fireside chat there. Keep on listening. If you got some, input, I would love to hear from you all.